Hi. This is my first video after I don't know how long. I've been busy with finals, but I'm free now. So let's get into it. Johnny wakes up to a sound of cardboard ripping. He thought, what's that sound? He lays perfectly still in his bed. He thought that it might be his cat, but it couldn't be because his cat is curled up in between his ankles. It's not the cat. It's not him. Now the room is dark. There's some lights from the street lamp outside, but there's no one else in the room except from Johnny and his cat. And it's neither of them. So what's that sound? He starts to scan around the room, and then he looked at his closet. He saw something shrunken away from his gaze, and he freezes. What the fuck is that? He was about to get up from his bed and ran out of the room to call out for his cousin Brittany, but he stopped himself because, well, he just moved in here. Well, technically he didn't move in like permanently, but he just got here, and he was living in upstate, and now he's moving into his grandpa's apartment. Maybe he was just not used to the environment yet. Now, Johnny is in his grandpa's apartment. This apartment feels familiar, but it kind of creeped him out because this apartment was renovated from an old kids TV studio into an apartment, and it was given to his grandpa as a thank you for his service as a puppeteer. Johnny's grandpa is a puppeteer. Of course, it's a free apartment in New York City. Who doesn't want that? His grandpa moved in here when he was a teenager. But he doesn't want to think about it. Maybe he's just overthinking it. So he said to himself that, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go back to sleep. He was about to reach out for his phone to turn on some gardening podcasts on his nightstand when he rolled over. He noticed something. 2 feet away from his bed, there's something. He couldn't make out what it was, but the light and shadows kind of reflected through that thing that makes it seem like it has a furry texture. So he looked at it very hard. He looks at it hard, and then the furry thing starts to readjust its posture, and he fucking freezes. What the fuck is that? Now Johnny didn't dare to look up. His only option was to just stay still and just hope that that thing didn't just see him rolled over. The thing is pear-shaped, and it's furry all over, and its mouth is wide as a dinner plate, and above the mouth, Johnny can see 2 ping pong balls. That must have been its eyes. Johnny had sleep paralysis hallucinations before, so he knows what it's like. And usually in those kind of, when he's experiencing hallucinations, he couldn't move his body. He would try to wiggle his toes in hope that his body would unlock and the hallucination would disappear. But in this case, he could move his body. And that thing is still there. He just chose not to move because that thing is lingering over him, staring at him. That thing starts to reach out its finger and poke at Johnny. And there was too much strength behind that finger. Johnny knows that this is not a hallucination. The puppet dropped its hand. It was using its right hand. It was as if the hand was being controlled by someone, like a puppeteer, because a puppet cannot move by itself, right? So Johnny is basically laying down on his bed, and the puppet was looking down at him. And Johnny tries to peek a little bit from the corner of its eyes, and he sees that the puppet is staring down at him on one eye, and the other eye is looking at the cat. And finally, the puppet moved away from Johnny and faced the curtain. It raised up its hand and smashed against the window. It rattles, but the glasses didn't budge. And then it smashed its hand again and again. The glasses didn't break. And then the puppet starts to squat and leaped to the window. Still, the glass was still intact. It rattles, but it didn't break. And at last, it gave up. Johnny heard the ripping sound again, and the puppet just hopped into a corner, and it disappears. And Johnny is trying to think, what the fuck just happened? Was it true? He hoped that he could wake up now because that was just a nightmare, right? But no, it was very real. Johnny rubbed on his shoulder where the puppet jabbed at him, and he reached out for his phone, turned on the flashlights, and starts to check around his room. Everything was fine. The photos has not been moved. There was no crack at the walls where the puppet could actually slip into. It has to be a nightmare, right? It has to be a dream. But then he saw a blue tuft fur on his beach carpet. It was real. He thought that it might have been a dream, but no, it was very real. But it was impossible for a puppet to walk on its own. There must have been a puppeteer. But the puppeteer must have hid behind the puppet because it was 5 feet tall. It was possible for a person to hide behind it or inside it. But if Johnny were to convince himself that what happened just now was real, then that means that his grandpa is still alive, because that was his grandpa's puppet. So the book is actually quite sad because it talks about Johnny's desperation to find his grandpa, even though his grandpa may or may not be alive, but he would kind of risk his life and overcome things that he doesn't want to, overcome his fear, just in hope that he would find a glimpse of his grandpa and not just... I guess just imagine that if there are your childhood cartoons. Well, okay, I don't really watch... Well, I mean, this book kind of reminded me of the Muppets. Well, the author actually took inspirations from the Muppets because he was afraid of the Muppets up until now, so he decided to make a book about it, which is this book, because his fear of puppets. But for me, I was around during the Muppets, I guess, but I didn't watch it growing up. I am more familiar with Elmo, but I didn't really watch like real life cartoons, if that makes sense. Like, I watched Dora, I watched Mr. Bean, but those are like 2D cartoons. Recording on a set production that I actually enjoy would be Full House. But Full House is not a cartoon, but like, I understand. But yeah, it just reminded me of the Muppets, Sesame Street, especially Sesame Street. And you know, every time after I read the book, every time I go into the store and I saw this bright blue puppet from the Sesame Street, I would just take pictures of it. And because I like the colors. I've always liked the color of Sesame Street puppets. But I like the book. I feel like it's just... the author did a great job of talking about his fear, kind of like projecting his fear onto Johnny. I feel like it's just a nice book to read during rainy season with your hot chocolate, or maybe during winter season. I don't know, we don't have winter here, but it just seems like a really chill book. I would say there's a twist at the end. Is that a spoiler? I don't know, but there's a twist at the end. I like the book. I like the idea. It's just very rare. I mean, I've never read a book like this where it's just centered around a puppet. So I think that's it for now. I make more videos after this because I have time. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!